Oh, let's do it. So there's been a lot happening in the past couple of days during the Chauvin trial. And a lot of this is centered around expert witnesses coming in and testifying to the excessive use of force. Today was interesting because they basically did a lot of, here, let's inform the jury of the way in which investigations work. We're going to go through and kind of step by step demonstrate what is done, what happens, and so they have a better understanding of the process. Where it gets particularly interesting, though, is the clip that we have, and then I want me and you, David, to kind of unpack this clip, because I have some theories about where the defense is going with their arguments, and it's exceptionally problematic.
Hey there, Shep. Yeah, the defense is raising more questions about George Floyd's drug use. It's also raising questions about that crowd of bystanders that the defense says may have distracted Chauvin. Now, Chauvin's defense attorney, in his most aggressive cross-examination yet, questioned an LAPD sergeant, an outside use of force expert, who called Chauvin's actions excessive.
A reasonable officer could perceive the words that people are saying and the tone that it is being said in as a threat or a risk to the officer's safety. Agreed?
A risk, possibly, but officers are typically trained that when it comes to verbal threats.
Now, that LAPD sergeant said that Chauvin's 866 hours of training should have prepared him to deal with that crowd, which included a 9-year-old girl. But, Shep, as you mentioned, the defense team has been arguing that Floyd's drug use and underlying health conditions led to his death. Today, the attorney for Floyd's family was having none of it.
Even I was surprised that he has the audacity to say, oh, it's the crowd's fault. These angry people, which I think is a suggested way of trying to say these angry black people. It's just asinine.
Testimony continues tomorrow, Shep. We're expecting to hear from more medical experts.
Shepard Smith here.
There was
All right,
another.
I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, the whole angry crowd thing just hurts my brain. And the reason it hurts my brain, as somebody who filled protests all summer, all winter, and at times was between both sides, where police are firing 40 millimeter less lethal and throwing flashbangs, and there's pepper spray and there's smoke bombs, and protesters are throwing fireworks back, and there's yelling and shouting and pushing on all sides. I was able to hold the camera steady and focus on the job that I had to do, because I'm a grown-ass adult who doesn't panic. And I think that the first order rule of a police officer is you don't panic in situations. So the hostile crowd thing, which was a crowd of children as young as 9 years old who watched a man get murdered, to me is just a load of horse hockey.
So the more problematic thing that happened today is there was a video clip played when George Floyd was still able to speak, before he went silent, before he stopped moving. And so the defense, Eric Nelson, who I found out today works for a very notable law firm in Minnesota that has been hired to defend the police. He plays a very short clip in court, and he asks the investigator testifying at the time, his last name is Ryerson. He asks him, do you hear Mr. Floyd say, I ate too many drugs? And the first person he asked this to before Ryerson, he asked another investigator prior to this, and he says, I can't make out what he's saying. He pesters him again. He said, do you hear him? Let's play this again. Do you hear him say, I ate too many drugs? He says, I cannot make out what he's saying. So he asks Ryerson. Ryerson has never seen this clip. He plays a very short clip without context. And he says to him, Do you hear him say, I ate too many drugs? Ryerson initially says yes. They come back up to do redirect. They played the full clip in context. And he asks Ryerson a series of questions. He says, was this the first time that you've heard this clip? Yes. So you've never had any like exposure to this clip where he says this particular statement prior to right now. So Mr. Nelson just kind of threw this at you and asked you what you heard. And he said, yes. So they played the full clip again in context. And so what happens is, and what Ryerson hears is Floyd say, I did no drugs. So what's happening with the whole angry black crowd, and this focus on Floyd's past drug use is that Nelson is taking two of the most common stereotypes of Black people, that they're angry, they're dangerous, they're drug addicts, and trying to use it to get the murder convictions dropped and allow his white client who murdered this Black man on the streets of Minnesota to walk free. And that is where we're at in America right now.
Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
It's like doing a push-pull when you ask a question like that, because the whole idea behind a question like that is to create seeds of doubt within the minds of the jurors. And as we continue to say over and over again, as we continue to do our in-house coverage, and if people are wondering why we're not covering this on the daily, there are so many other sources that are covering this on the daily. And if we were covering this, we wouldn't be able to do things like the Andrew Grant Houston interview, the Colleen Echo Hockey interview. We have Elise Barrett coming on tomorrow to talk about COVID. We wouldn't be able to do those other things. And so there's a ton of channels that are covering it on the daily. That's why we're doing a summary on it. Jennifer, you're doing a great job on the summaries on this, and we will continue to follow this. It just takes one juror. It just takes one.
One more thing I'm going to say real quick. On ABC News, Deborah Ramirez, she's a law professor at UMN, University of New Mexico, UNM. She had some really great kind of rebuttals to the people that were complaining about, that Floyd deserved what happened. And she was like, this big settlement, this $27 million settlement the Floyd family received, this is paid for by taxpayers. Derek Chauvin does not pay a dime of this. And she suggested that they do like what they've been, kind of implemented in Colorado, where, police have to have some kind of liability insurance. If they have something like this happen, kind of like doctors have malpractice insurance. If something like this happens, they have to pay a percentage of, the whatever damages are paid out to whoever's been wronged, as a way in which to kind of hold police accountable, because police unions have become so powerful, it is difficult to really hold police accountable for anything. So check her out. She's an analyst on ABC News, where I was watching today. Her name is Deborah Ramirez. She is a law professor at the University of New Mexico, has some really great thoughts about ways to hold police accountable to kind of prevent things like this from happening.
And we'll have another update tomorrow. That'll be part of